Who are you? How do you know? How much of your identity is shaped by the events of your life, the things you've been through? What if you can't trust those events? Or at least your memory of them? What happens if your memories are false, implanted by someone else? What if they're erased, leaving you the person you were 2 years ago? Who are you then? The Danganronpa series is about hope and despair. These two concepts wind around each other, explicitly called out by the games many times. Danganronpa V3 is also about truth and lies. This is also called out and discussed within the story, and these are both great themes. But there's a third set of concepts that I've never seen anyone talk about in these games, and that's memory and identity. What happens to you, to yourself, when someone messes with your memory? I'm going to discuss things a little bit out of order. What I find when I look over the series is that this theme develops more and more strongly as it goes on, from Game 1 to 2 to 3. However, this doesn't mean that Danganronpa V3 has the most interesting discussion. Instead, I have the most to say about the midpoint of the escalation, a point where the questions raised are not as easy to answer as they are at either end of the curve. All that said, spoilers for all 3 games begin here. It's not possible to discuss these themes without going into the twists and reveals. So if you haven't played the games, and you want to go in fresh, stop here and come back when you've been appropriately destroyed emotionally. Part 1. Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc starts when Makoto Naegi begins his first day of school at Hope's Peak Academy, a school for exceptionally talented teenagers to hone their individual talents. When he first steps inside, his head spins and he faints, waking up sometime later in an empty classroom. The other 14 students in Class 78 have all experienced the same thing. They find that the school has been locked down, empty of anyone but themselves and the robotic stuffed animal Monokuma, with all windows and doors blocked. As we all know, the students are forced into a killing game, urged to murder one another in order to escape. As it turns out, Sometime Later is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that recap. While Makoto and the others only experienced a short blackout, it has in fact been over 2 years since they entered Hope's Peak Academy. Photographs turn up around the school showing scenes that they don't remember. In these pictures, they are happy and carefree, murderers and victims alike, and the blue sky can be seen clearly through the unblocked windows. Later, Makoto discovers videos of all his classmates agreeing to remain in the school indefinitely, including one of himself. What the characters don't remember is the rise of Junko Enoshima and Mukuro Ikusaba as the ultimate despair. Together, 2 of their own became the downfall of all humanity. In an attempt to safeguard themselves and the world's hope, all the rest of Class 78 agreed to close themselves in. Without knowing why, they're shaken and afraid of their own choices. Makoto can't reconcile the person on the video who looks like him, who speaks with his voice but who says things he doesn't remember and doesn't think he would say, with the Makoto watching the video. Compared to what we'll discuss later in the series, the identity issues raised in Danganronpa 1 are pretty minor. The characters are surprised by their own decisions, but once they learn the truth, they understand why they would have made them. They know who they are, and while the specifics of their relationships changed in the missing 2 years, their core personalities did not. However, there are still elements of this theme that will come into play later. One such moment is Kyoko's confrontation with Monokuma, demanding to know what he did with her body. You may have noticed that the students were freshmen in high school at the last memories they can access. There's an awful lot that happens to a person's body between the ages of about 14 and 16. Kyoko knew pretty much all along that something had happened, and it's easy to imagine why. Think about what it would be like to pass out and then wake up what feels like a few minutes later with wider hips, larger breasts, longer legs, or a deeper voice. She can't have been the only one to experience these physical changes, and her sense of self is deeply affected by them. The body horror of waking up 2 years older is about the extent of the theme here in Danganronpa 1. By the end of the killing game, the students all feel aged beyond their years, whether or not they account for the 2 they missed. But there's still that feeling of wonder, of what if. Seeing the pictures of the class happy and enjoying their normal teenage years gives a real sense of what was stolen from them. They may now know that they had a sports festival, for example, and see proof of what they were doing, but they'll never remember going through it. If you don't recall the experience, can you even say it ever really happened to you? Part 2. Danganronpa V3. Killing Harmony. Let's jump ahead to the end of the series. Danganronpa V3 Killing Harmony certainly made some choices. I have a lot of residual emotional distress that we will not be getting into today. Suffice to say that the reveals in this game blew the twists in the other games completely out of the water. What comes out in the final trial is that the characters of the game are fictional. Well, I mean, we knew that, but really fictional. I mean, in-universe. Let's back up. The game we've been playing takes place in an alternate universe, spun off from our own, in which the first two Danganronpa games and the anime were themselves fictional. In this world, Danganronpa became such a phenomenon that a reality show was created to capitalize on its popularity, pitting real people against one another in real killing games. These people apparently volunteered to be on the show out of love for the franchise, a desire to be on TV. There really isn't any kind of prize mentioned for the winner, but I digress. This ultimate real fiction is the true reality of the game we're playing in our own, really real universe. So wait, if the contestants on the show are real people, how are they fictional? Well, in this universe, we have the technology to entirely wipe a person's mind and replace it with a pre-written character. While there was a real, volunteer Kaede Akamatsu, that's not the Kaede we've come to know. Instead, Kaede the Ultimate Pianist is a character written by a team of executives for the TV show called Danganronpa. The real Kaede was a depressed, bloodthirsty person who wanted the chance to kill people. The Ultimate Kaede wanted nothing more than for everyone to escape, and felt the guilt of the murder she committed strongly enough to give up her right to escape. Danganronpa V3 goes to extreme lengths to confirm that the people we get to know over the course of the game are not real. As far as the narrative is concerned, the real people who volunteered for the killing game died the minute they were overwritten by fictional characters. They no longer exist. Therefore, a lot of interesting questions about culpability and identity are kind of squashed. For example, is the actor behind Korikyo responsible for the 1,000 murders that he committed? Well, no. The actor is dead. Arguably, the fictional Korikyo isn't even responsible, as those murders were part of his backstory and never really happened. If anyone deserves culpability for a crime that never occurred, it would be the writers behind the TV show, and it would be absurd to hold a writer accountable for not really murdering people who never existed. By the end of the game, the survivors are determined to live, to go out into the world and make themselves real. They need to discover who they are. There's who they were, but do those people matter? It doesn't really seem so. They don't seem like they're planning to find the friends and family of the people who applied to be on the show. Even if they did learn more about the original people, would understanding them help the survivors understand themselves? It really feels like the answer is no. Instead, Maki, Himiko, and Shuichi have embraced the identities they remember, despite knowing they aren't quote-unquote real. Whoever Shuichi Saihara was before, he is now and will always be the ultimate detective, remembering an uncle who never existed and solving crimes that never occurred. But that still feels easier than attempting to become people they don't remember, to contort themselves into lives that might be waiting for them at home but no longer fit. Part 3. Danganronpa 2. Goodbye Despair. Somewhere in the middle of the two extremes of the first and last games sits Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair. This game is centered around a school trip intended to give the 16 students of Class 77 a chance to hang out, get to know one another, build bonds, and become best friends. This premise is quickly derailed by the appearance of Monokuma and the institution of another killing game. To the player, it's clear right away that some things just aren't right. How did we seemingly teleport from a basic Hope's Peak classroom to a deserted island? If Junko was Monokuma, shouldn't he be dead? That's not Byakuya, is it? Well, we were all right to be skeptical. This place, this paradise, isn't real. And not in the way that the people in V3 aren't real. It literally doesn't exist. Not outside the minds of the characters, trapped in a simulation. How did they get in there? As it turns out, these students have also lost about 2 years of memories, and during those years, they changed. Their imprisonment in the Jabberwock Island program is a last-ditch attempt to redeem them for crimes they no longer remember. Sometime during the missing 2 years, Junko Enoshima was able to corrupt the entirety of Class 77. We are not going to discuss how. The important part is that this class of 14 became the Remnants of Despair, a specialized team of Junko's personal lackeys. They were not innocent. They carried out her orders, and although the details are vague, we know that it was not pretty. When putting the remnants into the simulation, Makoto Naegi was able to sort of system restore their memories to a point before Junko reached them. The characters have no idea what they've done, and are horrified when they learn the truth. Here, finally, are the most interesting questions in the series. Who are the Remnants of Despair? Are the characters we come to know and love the same as the remnants they became? Are they responsible for the crimes their future selves committed? After all, these are the people who maimed, killed, and spread terror for Junko. But are they? None of the characters in Danganronpa 2 would do any of those things. Not without, or before, Junko's influence. So what does that mean? Do they already have the potential within them to be the monsters they became? Does that make them remnants already? If they return to the real world, do they deserve to be punished, held accountable for what they did that they do not remember? These are not questions with easy answers, and not ones that the game really seeks to answer. I'm not even sure if the narrative intended to bring them up, but I find them really interesting. There are philosophical arguments to be made in either direction. So, you may have noticed that the number of students didn't match up earlier. 2 students on Jabberwock Island were not part of the original Class 77, and both provide unique explorations of the theme. Chiaki Nanami has no memory, and Izuru Kamakura has no identity. Like the characters in V3, Chiaki is a created consciousness, in this case an AI programmed to help smooth over arguments between the remnants. Chiaki only exists within the simulation, not having her own real life to remember. She and Hajime have a moving conversation near the end of the game, discussing the ramifications of the remnants forgetting the events of the simulation. He doesn't want to forget Chiaki and the way she's changed them all. In fact, without the memories of the other 15, Chiaki has no identity. That's not to say she has no personality. On the contrary, Chiaki is charming, sweet, and surprisingly level-headed for how sleepy she is. She is the ultimate gamer, and the 16th student snuck into the class, this time for good. Far from being just an AI, Chiaki is a person. But there's a real danger that she could blink straight out of existence should the remnants give up their memories of Jabberwock Island. That's interesting, isn't it? Whether or not the remnants remember, Chiaki will cease to exist when the program is turned off. But her identity, her selfhood, can survive like all of ours if she's remembered. As she says herself, even if the distinct memory of who she was is gone, the influence she had on all of them and the way their lives changed because of experiencing life with her are part of an identity that can't simply be unplugged. Once again, we are not going to discuss the anime. I don't want to talk about how much this moving and interesting moment is ruined by the idea that she was real. I don't want to talk about moving on. The final member of our cast is our hero, Hajime Hinata. Or, as he was known before the system restore, Izuru Kamakura. Izuru is an implanted personality, created by the staff of Hope's Peak Academy as part of a cruel experiment. Hajime can't remember what his ultimate talent is because he doesn't have one. Wanting one was his reason for agreeing to become Izuru, who was given all of them. Hajime may or may not have known exactly how much he would change in the process. By the end, he's essentially a new person. Izuru wears different hair and clothes, answers to a different name, and has different skills and interests. While he does remember having been Hajime, he writes off his old self and leaves him behind. However, Hajime never fully went away. When put into the Jabberwock Island simulation, memory rolled back to before the experiments, Izuru disappears. Like all other aspects of his life, Hajime has to remember what happened in order to make the events part of his personality. Without the experiments, there is no Izuru. He is not, and never was, his own person. Learning about Izuru is at least a little traumatizing. Hajime has to spend a lot of time and effort in the finale working through this new knowledge. He isn't able to completely say he's not Izuru. He fears that waking up from the simulation will destroy Hajime again. Nonetheless, the person who returns to the real world at the end seems to be a synthesis of both, a combination of 2 sets of memories. Conclusion. Memory creates identity. Over the course of the games, Danganronpa treats memory as what ultimately creates identity. When faced with a discrepancy between what truly happened and what they remember, characters prioritize their memories. The Danganronpa cast may mourn the loss of their normal school life, but none of them linger over who they could have been with that different set of experiences. The remnants of despair were functionally killed when Class 77 forgot what had made them change. The real Ultimate Fiction characters claim the lives for the people they are now and abandon whoever they may have been before. In the end, it doesn't matter what actually happened. If it isn't remembered, it isn't part of the person it happened to. The memory erasure and implantation in Danganronpa is largely played as a plot point. It holds back information from the characters so that it can be revealed later as a big twist, and for that it works very well. But it is strikingly consistent across the 3 games. With increasing intensity, each game looks at who you are when you don't remember. I hope exploring this theme gives you a new way to approach the games, some fanfic ideas, or at least an entertaining few minutes. If there's anything you think I missed, let me know in the comments. I haven't read all of the supplementary material, so there might be plenty that I don't know. Thanks for watching.